That's your cue. You can go.
Hello and welcome to Andy Explains It All. My name is Andy Asimakis, and with me is Stephen Fontana,
I don't know anything.
and he is going to learn something today, hopefully. Maybe that's the whole point of this. For those of you who are new to Andy Explains It All, this is a show where I, Andy, one idiot, will explain something to Stephen, the other idiot, and hopefully he'll learn something. That's the goal of this whole podcast.
No promises, Andy. No
No,
promises.
because I am a very ill-informed individual, so this is going to be a total shit show. But best luck to us both. This show posts each and every Thursday on your podcast.
No, this is going. This is going up Fridays. This is going up Fridays.
Oh, Dina, you already fucked me in the doc.
No,
They
no.
got like words in.
Did I do Thursday? Did I write there?
Yeah,
Oh, I
you-
did.
yes,
I'm
you did.
sorry. I'm sorry, buddy.
This will post each and every Friday for your listening pleasure of choice on your podcast service of choice.
See, it's not easy, Andy. It's not easy.
at all.
I love
You
it.
do this every week.
I do. I do.
Including iHeartRadio and hopefully Spotify and other things as well. If you like this show, we have others. Our flagship shows, the Dual Screens podcast and the Dual Screens Gamescast. Those post on Thursday and Monday, respectively. I should have read those backwards because that's how that thing would work. Um, if you like what we do here on these podcasts, you can support us on patreon.com, just like our producer, Colton Nestler, who is an apprentice, from what I
Yes,
understand.
Colton the Apprentice.
That's his title.
That's right. That's his title now. He's chosen that title. He said, "I'm back to being a producer. I want to be able to choose a title." I said, "Absolutely. What would you like your title to be?" So we have the demigod and or grandmaster when Alex Gonzalez was our producer, and now Colton is back to being a producer, and he wants to be known as the apprentice.
So that's a little fun tip for all you future producers out there. If you want to be a producer of the show, go to patreon.com/NDS podcast and you get to pick your own title.
There you go.
You can be Lord Supreme Ruler, His Majesty,
Mm-hmm.
Tits McGee, whatever you want to
Oh
do.
God,
Well,
God forbid Buzz Killington gets more money because
I dare him. I dare Buzz. I'll call him the Almighty Buzz, if that's what it came down to.
wow.
So yeah, head over to patreon.com. Give us $1 if you like. Help support the show. Be part of our super excellent Super Secret Discord group and join the shenanigans on a daily basis. And any feedback you want to give to us about the show, how terrible it is, how great it is, give us an email at feedback.com. Oops, sorry. Feedback at NDSPod. This is not easy.
Wow,
You make it look so easy every single week.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to not look at the document.
Oh
but
no,
it's
it's better to
actually
just
looking
look,
at it.
especially when you're starting, because I mean, you have
Right.
you have how many? You have 6 more after this episode
Right.
of this show. So by the time you get to episode 4 and 5, you should be a
Hopefully.
well-oiled machine. Remember, we've done 133 episodes of
We've done a lot.
NDS. We've done 25 other shows, but not including Patreon shows. I mean, honestly, the first 70 were a disaster.
No, let's come on. I want maybe the first 30 ish.
Yeah,
70 is that's
sure.
that's half our shows.
I mean, I've bit my cheek when I've done an intro and completely fucked it up before.
That's like half of our shows. No, I wouldn't say 70.
All right, so this, for those of you who don't know, this is one of our seasonal. This is our first of our seasonal content of the year. That we're going to do 4 different shows that are going to be bi-weekly. So this show is going to post every other Friday, which we do need to write in the doc going forward. This is going to go. It starts on the 10th, and then it's going to be every other week from then. So that yes, the first season. Seasonal content is going to be Andy Explains It All, and which I chose the topic that I want to know about, that I feel like Andy knows a very good amount about. He was nervous about this one. Why were you so nervous about this one, Andy?
Well, I'll get into that once you actually
Okay.
say what it is, why
Mhm.
you chose it, and then I can
Okay.
vent for like 5 seconds, and we'll go to the races after that.
All right. So the choice for this week and the topic for Andy Explains It All is Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why I asked for Stephen King is because you are a huge horror movie and video game fan. I know that Stephen King has been essentially one of his properties has been a new movie, I think each of the last 3 or 4 years at this point.
Yeah, he's back. I think it really propelled him
Right.
back into like the mainstream
Mhm.
conversation again. So now it's like there was that, then there was some Netflix joins that he did recently, and then there was more. So it's just
We
it
had
seems like
it.
it's gonna end.
we had Pet Cemetery, we had It
And
2, and
we had
now
the Dark Tower,
The Dark Tower, and now we had
and
the
then we
the
had
sequel to The Shining,
right Doctor Sleep,
Doctor
and we
Sleep.
had Gerald's Game on Netflix,
Okay.
and we had I think it's 1920 was the
And
other one,
also
also
The
on
Name of Your
Netflix.
Dog?
Yes, Cujo,
Mm-hmm.
which I think they're remaking, but I think it's a robot dog.
Oh,
I
good
don't
lord.
know. I don't
Why are they
know.
doing that? Why?
I really don't know.
It didn't work for Chucky.
It did work for Chucky. It did work. It worked
I don't
in
know about
some
that.
ways and not in others, but I don't know. I liked it because Mark Hamill, he can't do no wrong in my eyes. Unless you count The Last Jedi. That
It's
was horrible.
Shut up, nobody asked you. Okay. So I know that Stephen King is very prolific. I have not been one to really appreciate or enjoy Stephen King. So I want to know what about him that makes him so wonderful, why you love his works
Okay.
and other stuff like that. And I want you to teach me. I want you to educate me in the ways of the Stephen King fan. So
Because
with that, I'm going to give it to you.
I mean, you do share a first name, and you do spell it the same way, which is kind of nice. So you
Mhm.
have that common link with each other. But I was nervous because I don't know how to explain a human being to someone.
Uh-huh.
That's my thought was, how do I explain with Stephen King? Because he's a lot of things. So we spoke about it before, and I think just coming from a place of how he kind of came into my life
Mhm.
and which of his works sort of meant the most to me, and discuss his career, give some cool fun tidbits and trivia that I've come across throughout the years, and that's a good foundation for a conversation, I feel, about Stephen King. So that's a good way to lead this
I like it.
whole explains it all. So I think no, so Stephen King, he is known by most people as the master of horror. That's like his sort of his affectation, as it were.
Okay.
But I think if you sort of examine his body of work, especially his earlier years, with works like It and Tommyknockers and his
I'm
more
sorry. I'm sorry. Tommy Knockers?
we'll
That's
get
a
to
porn,
that.
right?
Yeah, it totally is.
Yeah, it's got to be.
His earlier works, I think how I can best describe Stephen King is uh what cocaine and vodka look like in its human form.
Right. Okay.
That's what a Stephen King is. So, you know me when I was a kid, I was always into horror at a very young age. And I think my first real exposure to Stephen King was Misery. Now,
Yeah.
Misery, for those who don't know, it is a story about a writer, which King does a lot in his novels. He puts himself as the lead. A lot of his stories, his main roles are struggling writers or just writers of fame or what have you. So it's about a writer named Paul Sheldon who is finishing up his latest novel. He does these books called Misery. There's trashy romance novels, really. At the end of the day, it's what they are
Mm.
for bored housewives and softcore porn, really. And he was writing the last entry in the Misery series because he wanted to be a more serious writer and get away from the trash because he's a good writer, Paul Sheldon, but he was just kind of anchored by the success of Misery. It put his kids through college and his grandkids through
Right.
college, so it was, it put food on the table. So he didn't want to,
Now,
turn his back on that
let me
altogether.
see if I remember this movie because I've never seen
Mm.
the movie straight through. Because when it came out, I was obviously very young, and
Yes.
when if I was even born, I don't know. This was an '80s movie or '90s movie? I don't really know.
Again, and I was, I must have been at that time maybe 8 years old when I was watching, and I was on the VCR, so VHS tape when I first
Yeah.
watched this.
Okay.
Movie.
So yeah, I probably saw it after it was like a home thing or on like HBO or something.
Right.
If I'm remembering correctly, I think it's the villain which is Kathy Bates, if I remember correctly.
Mhm,
She's
mhm.
like a super fan that just keeps him there because she doesn't want the books to end.
Well, yes. Essentially, when she gets a hold of the latest manuscript for the book and see that he's going to be killing off Misery, he's like, you can't do this to my Misery. You gotta." So she burns his book and makes him write a new one.
She burns the original manuscript, so
Yes,
he has nothing now. He's got
because
right.
apparently Paul's character is very superstitious. When he made his first book, he made one copy, gave it to his publisher, and it's like a ritual for him.
Mm,
So he doesn't write a new. He makes only one copy, and that's it. So she takes his weeks and months worth of work and in front of his face burn. Well, let's give it back to the original story. Is that he gets in a car accident and she saves him. Annie Wilkes, which is
right.
the Cat Bates character. So it starts off pretty innocent, and then she gets him, and she's nursing him back to health. His legs are broken, and it's all very kind of not super intense in the get go. But then her sort of dark persona starts to come out, her obsessive side,
Hmm.
and as a young viewer, it really kind of stuck to me,
Right.
this movie. And back in those days, I was scared over things like Freddy and Chucky and Michael Myers and
Now
Jason.
remember, listeners, he's 8 years old, ish.
Right. I'm fairly
So
young at that point.
no reason to be watching any of the movies he just said, and yet he's watching Freddy, Jason, and Stephen King movies at 8 years old, and you wonder why he's fucked up and wants the power of
Of course.
invisibility over
Of
anything else.
course. The things I would do with that power.
Okay.
So anyway, so at the very least, when I was a young, a young sort of consumer of horror, I could say to myself, all right, Freddy Krueger, yes, I'm scared of him, but at least he's not real. Or Jason can't get me. That's not a real thing. It's just a movie. But the idea of someone essentially kidnapping you and holding you hostage and then eventually breaking both your legs after they've healed was very real to me. And I
Hmm.
recall that scene when she essentially hobbles him
Yeah,
in the movie.
she puts like a
She puts
cinder
the
block
wooden
between his
block
knees or
between
something.
his legs, yeah,
Yeah,
his ankles
his
basically,
ankles. Yeah, and then smashes them together.
his sledgehammer, yeah. So that was like, I think we were at the VCR with the rewind on that because my cousin was like, I watched that again. So it was just over and over. So that was sort of the first intro to Stephen King's mind, even though I wasn't really aware of who Stephen King was at the time. Then later on, I recall being sort of bombarded with the Shining commercials on Channel 11.
Yes, I remember those. Yes, it was like the muffled narrator.
Yes,
He's coming to the
yes,
and you're
and
like,
they would
"Ah."
show they would have the song, the driving to the hotel song, that na, 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 that really creepy
Mhm.
song with the really awesome narrator.
And then there was like the first person camera, right, of him going through the ice caverns, kind of like
Right.
giving away the end of the movie, but not really.
And I don't recall the exact words, but I remember something along the lines of something something horror vision from Stephen King's masterpiece. And I was like, oh, Stephen King. So this is probably a book. Again, the idea of things being books beforehand when you're a kid don't really kind of click with you. You think, oh, it's in the TV. It's probably where it came from. But looking back now, most things that we watched as kids were probably our first novels at some point, or even teleplays. So as I got older, I started to look into Stephen King more, and I read his books at first to compare to how they were like versus the movie.
Mm.
Because by then I had consumed things like, okay, The Shining, Carrie, Christine, um, Needful Things is a horrible, horrible movie. There's so many bad ones, which we'll get to that later on, though. But when I was in college, was when I was obsessed with all things Stephen King. I had one of his books with me every single day. When I finished one, I started another. because back in those days, I had this idea in my head that I was going to be a writer when I was older, and it didn't pan out for me.
I can't imagine why.
Because my parents didn't really try to cultivate that, and they were like, you can't really eat or feed yourself, or you can't go to school
Is
for
that why
that.
is that why it's like pulling teeth to get you to write
It
something for the
is.
site?
It is. It is. Yeah, it's
'Cause
PTSD. It's
yeah,
no, daddy. No, daddy. I can make it work. I promise.
perfect.
Um, and there was a quote that Stephen King said, which was, I forget the exact words of it, but it was along the lines of, if you don't have the time to read and write 4 to 6 hours a day, you won't be a good writer.
Mm.
So I thought back then, okay, I'll just read all this shit. And I would essentially read his stuff, and I would jot down notes and little sort of short story ideas. I have like manuscripts in my closet, like piles and piles of writing when I was a kid.
Hmm.
It's mostly horrible. There's some good ideas in there somewhere, I think, but it's mostly crap. Um, but again, a lot of it came from just reading a lot of Stephen King and just trying to suss out like how the books differed from the movies.
So what what was his breakout?
I,
Like maybe were the books popular before they were made into movies? Like was he a prolific writer at the point when he started to make
I
the
think from
movies?
early on, he was when his first book was Carrie, and Carrie, to me, again, when I was a kid, I wasn't the popular kid. I wasn't I wasn't really picked on, but every now and then I did have some trouble with bullies, and that's the classic tale of a bully's revenge.
Hmm.
So to me, basically any any violent act I had suffered as a kid, or like demeaning remark or disparaging, quip here or there, I felt like I could identify with Carrie's character because she was just a picked on kid, and then she got to slaughter all her bullies at the end of the book, which was amazing to
Now,
me.
if I remember correctly, and I don't know if this was the new movie or the original movie or something, but from what I remember, people were cheering her killing
Oh,
the
how do you not cheer that though? Because I think horror movies, there's a subgenre of like just revenge fantasy, which I adore, and you find it in a lot of King's work and things like I Spit on Your Grave and Last House on the Left. Just you
well,
have
yeah, like Jason Voorhees. He's a revenge character.
right.
He was
Well,
bullied.
Jason's character, you root for him because you want to see how great the kills can be. It's all about the kills, and plus you make characters who you don't really care about. They're just empty shells of people. They're just
Stephen King doesn't
archetypes,
do that
really.
though. A lot of his main
No, he
characters,
makes them with
yeah,
heart. So
yeah,
even the ones that you hate, they have some level of depth to them,
right.
which is great. So Carrie, she gets picked on both at home and at school. She has no real safe place to be. I mean, when her mom was putting her in the closet and locking her, making her do prayers, um, there's that space, but she just has no place to feel safe ever. When she goes home, she's tormented. When she goes to school, she's tormented. She gets her first period at school. Then the kids tell her to plug it up. That's a really brutal scene. And the book reads like police reports, which is really weird, but it's also really effective.
Hmm.
It's like just people's accounts of what happened, and it's all sort of pieced together with flashback. It's all taking place from this incident happened involving Carrie White at the school. Most of her classmates are now dead. Let's work our way back from there and see how it all kind of came together. and it was kind of the first in his this fantasy of people who are perceived as weak with a great power. And it goes on in books like Firestarter or The Dead Zone, where you have these leads who you think you can't like overcome them, but they have this like sort of, I want to say, mutant ability in a sense.
Do you think Carrie is kind of like the modern, or like Cash Me Outside Girl is the modern day Carrie, where
Oh God.
she goes on Dr. Phil because she's got a problem at home, and then she gets a superpower, which is making dumb rap videos and becoming insta famous.
Yeah,
I think you.
I feel if she was in the school, I'd probably burn her alive too. with all of my that is just the absolute worst. I don't want that for anyone. That's like the worst power to have.
So obviously Stephen King's themes, especially in these earlier works, seem to be speaking to you in some fashion, because they speak to the victim having some sort of power, getting there. So either they're getting their revenge, or they become shells of who they are,
It was
and
it
it's
was a
more like
big
a tragedy.
it was a big part of that, and also just seeing how creative the mind can be. Because I always felt like you can have the most pedestrian life ever, and then your outlet is, I'm gonna write the most fucked up shit I can possibly imagine to kind of counterbalance my really mundane life.
Mm.
Plus, I didn't have the drugs or the alcohol that Stephen King did when he was writing his works back in the day, which, if you read it especially, you can tell that a lot of it was sort of guided by the drugs.
Somebody was telling me that Pennywise is a allegory for one of the children's, like, home life, like like one of the kids. I don't know the story really, I don't know the characters, I don't know any of that stuff, but like it's almost like the split personality of one of these kids, and the kid that keeps continuing and surviving is actually the one killing all of his friends, because like I just read that, like, it's not literally what it is, but it's like
Okay.
figuratively what it is. It's like the fantasy of, my life is awful, I have nothing going for me, and like fantasizing about just taking everybody out around you, except that in this movie it really happens, and it's a clown named Pennywise instead.
Right. I mean, you can. I guess it depends on the source material for that. If you're looking at the movies, you can kind of derive that, because the movies chopped out a great deal of the book, which was that we're all a space turtle's dream, and there's this light and dark force. The light being space turtle, and the dark being it. So there's a lot of weird sort of cosmic things in that book, and if you read it, it's essentially unshootable as a movie.
I
It
see.
it jumps from
It jumps timelines, doesn't it?
it's a 30-year book essentially. So it
Uh,
goes from when they were kids, then when they're adults, and when they move away from Derry, they lose their memories and they kind of get them back slowly. It's really kind of garbled up. Um, and then you throw in the whole space turtle and the whole dark lights and the
do you literally mean
macroverse, and
space turtle?
yes, an actual space turtle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder what that would look like in a movie. Like,
Well, I can
like
see
what is it,
that.
like Pan's Labyrinth or something, or like not Pan's Labyrinth, the Labyrinth or something like that, just like a
Right.
Henson puppet.
Right.
Oh, let me tell you a story about how in my dream.
Oh no,
there
it's
was a
the turtle
force of-
from Kung Fu Panda. What was it, Oogway? What was his name?
I don't
Or
know.
something like that.
That I mean,
But that's the
okay.
classic light versus dark kind of allegory there. Like there's a light force, there's a dark force, they're in constant strife with each other. It crash lands on Earth because they're fighting in space. So it's you know, and then it just
Okay.
feeds off of fear.
How did anybody? Okay. How did anybody read that book and not immediately
And
say,
that book is that's a
"Oh, this
thick
is
ass book.
nonsense," and just put it down and walk away from it. Like,
Well, there's also a orgy in that. There's a child orgy in that book,
well,
which was cut out from the movies for obvious reasons. But there's a scene in the book where they 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 want to be close to each other, the kids,
mhm.
and they sort of want to lose their virginity to each other. So they all just take turns running train on Beverly in the book.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. Now, did you read the book first or did you see the movie first?
So I did read the book first because by the time it was actually the miniseries with Tim Curry and the late great John Ritter, that was the mid '90s. So I had read the book before then
Hmm.
when I saw the movie, and it was one of those things where I was like, this is like very wildly different. But then I can see why they cut out a lot of the space mumbo jumbo. You can't film that.
They grounded it in some sort
You
of
you
reality.
you really can't. You really can't. You can allude to it. In the remakes today, they sort of hint at all that stuff. There's a weird ritual of chud that they have to do. It's a
Right.
really
Of course.
convoluted mess. But it's hard to kind of adapt that without acknowledging that there's so much goofiness to it. And the whole thing was basically written to like honor all of the classic Universal, the Wolfman, the Black Lagoon monster,
Mhm.
Dracula, Frankenstein, all those like classic Universal monster movies. Freddy Krueger is in it in the book, so it was like kids' fears and things
Interesting.
that yeah.
So,
I want to say maybe one of my not even in my top 5 King novels. I want to say
he also did Stand By Me and The Green Mile, right?
The Green Mile I like because it touches on the whole supernatural elements, but there's no horror aspect to it.
Right. Well,
Uh,
the humans are horrible to each
right.
other.
That's the horror. It's
Right.
it's the wardens in the penitentiary that treat their inmates like garbage. And you have the gentle giant that can heal people.
I'm tired, boss.
Um,
I want to
yeah.
go home.
So
I remember
there's
seeing that and being very, very moved by that.
Right.
Rest in peace, right? Michael Clark Duncan, rest in peace.
Oh my God, yeah. There's like a king curse. A lot of actors that work on this stuff end up dying. I'm sure you could do a whole like thesis on
Tim
that.
Curry's still alive, right? He's just in a
He's
wheelchair
he's
forever.
just not doing well.
Yeah.
I met him.
He's
I met him
got
last
something.
year.
What does he have? He's got some
I
Parkinson's.
think he just I think he's had a
Lou Gehrig's?
stroke. I think it was a stroke.
Oh,
Oh, it was. He had a massive stroke. And he's just getting up in age, dude. He's an old man. He's been around for a long time.
sure.
So Carrie, Misery, Cujo was another favorite of mine growing up as well.
And that was just about a rabies-ridden dog
Right.
going on a killing spree.
And I wasn't a dog owner back then either. I wasn't
Right. Sure.
actually I had this a sort of tiny fear of dogs when I was growing up a little bit.
Me
It
too.
was when I
too.
would walk down the block and they would walk past me, hearing the leash jingle behind me kind of got under my skin because I would envision the dog getting loose and then eating me alive. This is what Stephen King did to me as a kid.
There
and
was a
books like
dog.
Cujo.
There was a dog on my block as a kid. His name was Rocky. He was a huge Rottweiler.
That was my first dog's name was Rocky. He was a
what kind of dog?
little terrier.
No, this was a
Little
giant
10-pound terrier.
Rottweiler, and I was a young kid, maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. And I remember Rocky did not like rollerblades. So if you were rollerblading in front of the owner's house, and the owner, we loved the owner, we loved Rocky. He was a sweet dog, but he was big. And when you would go in front of their house, he would run back and forth across the in their gate, like run back and forth and bark and scream and bark if you went by. So I started to go across the street if I was rollerblading past him. So I would go across the street And one day I hear him and I go, "Oh, it's Rocky," but they left the driveway open. So
Mm-hmm.
Rocky runs across the street. Never mind cars coming. He would have been run over if there was a car coming with that. Runs and I hear him and I freeze up and think that's it. My life is over. And he jumps up. He pushes me up against the gate that I was next to, licks my face, and then just goes down and just starts sniffing my skates. And my neighbor was horrified that the dog ran after me. Like he was so upset that this happened to me. But even before that, I was afraid of Rottweilers because my uncle owned a Rottweiler and named Jimmy, and he would put on like latex masks and like he taught Jimmy to attack, like attack the robber, attack the stranger. So I would always see him in attack mode, like not really like play biting, like bite the arm and like all that fun stuff, like playing. But me as a kid, as like a 4 or 5 year old, I was always terrified of dogs because that's what I saw of big dogs. So that scarred me for life. But I don't think I've ever seen Cujo, to be honest.
There is a lesser known dog themed story of King's that I think deserves some sort of adaptation. It's called The Sun Dog. It's in one of his like novellas.
Okay.
It's like 4 stories in one book. He did like I think the Midnight Crew or the Skeleton Crew. It was in a collection called Four Past Midnight, and it had 3 of my favorite short stories of his. One is The Langoliers, which is about a jet airplane that in a lightning storm goes through a portal into the past,
That's gotta be
and
weird.
they fight these one of the worst adaptations ever, by the way. They fight these little. It's like imagine a black Pac-Man.
Hmm.
And they essentially what they do is they eat up all the time and the past. That's what they do.
Stephen King must be heavily into psychedelics, no?
He's heavily medicated, yes. So it's got that story. It has Secret Window, Secret Garden, which also Johnny Depp played.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that's another. He's a writer. Um, he has a weird thing about writers and like a split dark persona.
Yeah.
He did that twice with that book and with the Dark Half. Same idea.
Didn't you do that with The Shining?
Well, The Shining, it was he wanted to be a writer. So he
Right.
thought if I take care of this hotel for like the winter season, I can get some writing done. So I get paid to live here essentially and work on my writing. Because he was I think he was a teacher, Jack Torrance. And he had some incidents involving again booze. Because he puts himself in his character as King. Like an alcoholic writer. That's who he is, essentially. That's who Stephen King is. And The Sun Dog is a story about a kid who goes to I think it's a pawn shop and finds an old camera. When he takes a picture with it, he sees an image of a dog in the background. And with each photo, it gets closer and closer to the front of the camera. That's a great short story.
He's gonna eat
Love
him.
that story.
Is he gonna eat him?
Well,
Oh, does he?
in
Does he
that
just
story,
want treats?
No, he wants treats in your flesh. Uh,
No bueno.
what do they do? I think how it ends is they take the last picture as the dog is jumping out of the photograph, and they trap it in something else, another camera, and that's how it ends. Well, there's a classic horror ending of there's a printer that has like I'm not dead or I'm not trapped or some shit like that. I forget, but it's a fun little story. So a lot of the stuff I like of his were grounded in reality. Again, when you have like Girl Can Set Fire with Her Mind, yeah, I get that. It's really real, but it has like it's set in the current times. But there is one book of his that I like. It's a pure fantasy. It's like a dark fairy tale. It's called The Eyes of the Dragon. It's like a medieval sort of Shakespearean fantasy tale about a king who's killed, and his son, who's the heir, is the prime suspect. There's like an evil wizard. It's a really fun read, and it's a departure from his usual like horror stuff.
Mm.
But again, the same kind of king elements and storytelling, which I like. Um, but yeah, as a Stephen King fan, it's been rough because there's been a lot of bad movie adaptations over the years.
Okay,
A
so that's a good thing we
lot.
can do. Let's
Yeah,
do
a whole lot.
let's rank
Handful of good and so many bad.
let's rank the 5 best Stephen King movie or
Okay.
television adaptations,
Okay.
and then the 5 worst.
Okay. 5 best. Misery. There's are no rank order, but saying the 5 best, 5 worst.
Okay.
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Misery. Pet Cemetery. Carrie. It Chapter 1, the recent one that they did, I think 2 years ago. And for the 5th one, let's think.
It's got to be The Shining, no?
That's asterisk because The Shining, Stanley Kubrick Shining is not Stephen King Shining.
Okay.
Those are very different stories. A lot of
let's
things
talk
were
about that.
changed.
Talk to
A
me
lot of
about
things-
that
yeah.
because I don't know anything about the
Stephen
changes.
King hated Kubrick's vision for The Shining. Hated it. Apparently, Stephen King turned in a draft, and Kubrick thought it was shit, and he had it completely rewritten. Now, the core elements are still there. It's about a family that goes to a hotel to watch said hotel. The hotel is on some ancient burial ground that has a hunger for human life. When it senses Danny has like this power in him, it says, if I get to Danny, I'll get his power. So it uses the father, Jack, who is a weak man, who's abused his wife and child, who is an alcoholic, who is stressed out of his mind. He's very weak, and it breaks him down slowly throughout the movie to essentially possess him to get to his son for his son's power. Those things are all kind of still there. But other things are not. The ending being the biggest difference in this movie compared to the book. In the book, the mother, Wendy, and Danny the son destroy the hotel via the furnace and the gas line, and they blow it up. The movie does a weird thing where Jack is left to freeze to death in the maze, which is not in the book. It was animal topiaries in the book that kind of came to life. There's no maze in the book at all.
Like where did the maze come from? Like, I don't understand why it was even there.
I think they tried to do animatronics for the film to mirror the book, but it didn't look well on camera.
Mm.
So I thought, okay, we'll do a maze instead.
But again, just canon wise, like why was there a maze of ice?
Well, that was in the movie. That was part of the hotel. Like, hey, it's a fun maze back here. Check it out.
But it was it was just snowed over.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good attraction during the season, but
Okay.
It makes for a haunting place at night, covered in snow, which was hundreds of pounds of salt that they used for that shot in the movie. That was not snow.
That's horrible.
Fun fact for you there. So Jack is left to freeze to death in the maze, and then there's that infamous shot of him in the Overlook as part of like the staff from years ago, like in the 1950s, I think it was, to sort of say like he's sort of always been here. But it's kind of vague. Like my interpretation was that someone similar to Jack had a similar fate in that hotel. Like there was the twin girls and their dad that killed them with the axe. So a similar kind of murder, killing of the family kind of vibe going on. throughout the whole hotel's
And that was the movie.
history. Yeah.
Okay.
in the-
Now, the way look what I remember thinking that this was something that he was destined to do over and over again.
Like it was his personal hell in a
That
sense.
yeah, like it's like he is, for lack of a better term, reincarnated all over and over again as this struggling soul because he keeps dying on this ground,
Right.
this cursed ground. Like anybody that dies there stays there.
Right. Well, he does meet former caretakers in the movie
Right.
that have become servants to the hotel, which is really funny. How you have someone who watched the hotel that they're basically being a butler or like a bathroom attendant in the film.
But they're not there, right? Aren't they?
No, they're not.
Spirit.
Well,
yeah, they're
they're
like
it's the,
aspirations.
yeah,
or,
yeah. They're forever
aberrations.
trapped in the hotel. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
kind of like they're locked in there. And then Stephen King, he made his own version of the film. I think years later on USA, like his vision of what it should be, the Shining, a 2-part TV miniseries, which was sort of okay-ish, but again, you can't match a budget for a TV film compared to a big budget Hollywood movie. You can't, and you can't cast Jack Torrance after you've had Jack Nicholson play him.
Right.
And a fun fact about that movie, one of the most grueling shooting experiences ever, because Kubrick was a maniac. He would do
he
like
was not
50, 100 takes for one simple shot. Like he drove Shelley Duvall insane, literally. Making
I
her,
remember
he would
reading about that.
berate her, curse her out, make her feel like shit. Like he broke her down physically, mentally, and you can see it in the movie. She looks like she's about to die.
Yeah.
She's always pale. She's always on the brink of tears because she was like that in real life. She was always yelled at. And she was told, Kubrick told his staff to ignore her, pay her no mind, like ignore her, don't listen to her, and treat her like garbage.
Oh man, the Screen Actors Guild must have had a
Could you
field day with that.
imagine that happening today? That's
This
insanity.
when was this? This was 80.
That was in the 80s.
83, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
And the film bombed when it came out. No one liked it.
It's a
They thought
hard
it was
movie.
shit.
It's a hard movie to most, and this may be a conversation for another day. But
Right.
most of Kubrick's stuff I find very unwatchable.
So
Most.
I'm gonna, I mean, Eyes Wide Shut is kind of, it's in a lesser, but still, it's not an easy watch. But yeah, we can say The Shining, Kubrick's vision of it.
Okay, so what would
But
be
again-
number 5? So that's an Erasmataz. That's getting an
Yeah.
asterisk.
Yeah, so that's the top 5 right there.
Okay, so you're gonna put it in the 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the 5 worst adaptations.
There's so many to choose from. There's like so many, I can't even know where to begin. So let's go with Tommyknockers, which I mentioned to you earlier. Tommyknockers is a movie about an alien spaceship that crash lands on Earth that the small town is kind of drawn to, and they molest it and touch it, and people's periods happen out of control, and they gush blood.
Ew.
It's like it does weird things to the townspeople. It's a weird movie. It's a weird book. It's too long. Like you can clearly tell he was drunk when he wrote that book. It's really hard to get through. Like I remember sitting there in the library at Hunter College reading it, and I was like, "Why is this so hard to get through?"
You went to
Like-
Hunter?
Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah. So I'm reading
That's
and I'm
weird.
like,
What?
I'm
Why
just
are we
like-
just figuring that out now? We've been
I don't
podcasting
know.
together for
We've
3
been
years.
friends for even longer. So I'm sitting there like, okay, wait a minute. He's a good writer, right? He's a good writer. Why is this not good? Like it's just bad. It has so many bad
Listen to me.
parts.
Listen to me, guys. I got a real
And
great book.
aliens.
I got
right.
a great book about you put a
Aliens.
aliens are always putting things in our butts. What if we put things in the alien
And it
butts?
makes you have a period blood everywhere.
Yeah, and you get
Gush more than usual.
and you get
And there's a
pink eye.
I'm typewriter.
You got a
and
pink
it-
eye in
I-
the side of
I
your
make
eye.
you write better. So it's a bad book. It's a bad book, and then you take that and try to make it into a half decent movie. doesn't work.
Who's
Bad
who
acting,
who's
bad
optioning
special
these
effects.
books to movies? Like
Well,
that's what
that's
I
the
want to know.
thing. When Carrie and Misery and Cujo and Pet Sematary were all sort of like had their success, it was like Marvel. Let's do this. Or let's do that. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work. And he was the hot shit back in the day.
Hmm.
And some of them didn't work.
Okay.
So Tommy Knockers is the first one I want to say. Then there's the Langoliers, which stars the impeccable Bronson Pinchot of Perfect Strangers fame, Larry Bartokomous. And when I said the words to you, a black Pac-Man, now imagine what a black Pac-Man would look like with super low budget effects on like USA Network
Oh boy.
back in the day. It's so bad. So bad.
No.
Oh, you
good.
know what, Steven? Since Shining was like an asterisk, I'm going to put an actual proper film there.
Oh.
Take its place. The Mist.
Okay.
Mist.
I've heard of this one.
We'll put that in there. That is
I'll allow it.
It's a great film, which actually changed the ending to a much darker version, which floored me when I first saw it.
Mm.
So typically in Stephen King's books, most of the heroes die. Like Carrie died. The family that was being attacked by Cujo, the young boy dies.
Spoiler alert.
In Pet Cemetery, the whole family dies. So he doesn't like to save his protagonist. He kind of lets them all kind of suffer.
Sure.
I guess because he went through a lot, being of the drink and the sorts. But a lot of the film version spared the youngins.
Right. Test audiences probably don't like when everybody dies.
When they could.
Right.
When it involved kids, especially. It's hard to kill kids in the screen, but when they do, I always applaud it because it's a gutsy move. But in The Mist, the short story version of it ends with the military coming through and saving the family. In case you know what the setup is, there's a writer.
Mhm.
Oh no, is he a writer or is he I think he draws movie posters. He's an artist. That's the main character's role. And they're going to the
That's
local
a cool thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting little job he's got there. They go to the local market to pick up some stuff as one does on the quiet afternoon. And then a mist rolls into town and it brings with it like giant bugs and spiders and wasps and these. It's very Lovecraft, that story.
I
Huge,
remember this commercial.
unimaginable, like creatures.
The Mist.
And it kind of has that cabin fever. It's people locked in a place. How soon will they turn on each other to survive? Then you have like this one religious lady who's trying to make her own little kind of cult congregation in the market.
Kind of sounds like Silent Hill.
Who convinces people that it's God's wrath,
right,
bringing plagues upon them.
The frogs are coming.
So she gets them to turn on the atheist group of the bunch. A lot of mistrust. Divisions are kind of like drawn across the line. So in the book, they escape. They get out. The main dad and his son escape with a family, and the military rolls in, kills the monsters. Okay, kind of a semi-happy ending, amongst all the bloodshed. In the movie version, which stars Tom Jane as the main character, it's him, his son, a local woman who was in the film version of Silent Hill who played the cop. So funny you mentioned that, by the way. And also, that's a huge influence of that game is The Mist. It's all about creatures coming out of the mist. There's actually the funky pterodactyl enemies in Silent Hill are clearly lifted from The Mist in their design.
Which is weird because the only reason why there was mist in Silent Hill is because of hardware limitations.
Right. But when the writers read that, they're okay, we can use this. It's spooky, plus we can hide our graphics with it. The two-pronged attack, basically. So in the movie, it's Tom Jane, his son, an old married couple, and this woman who are in a truck and they're driving off past through all these monsters and shit, and their truck gives out. And the dad has a handgun with him. So rather than have his son and these people be torn apart by these creatures who I think the spiders, their webbings will melt your skin off. Some really graphic and gross body horror shit in this movie. He decides to kill them all one by one. He gets to himself, and there's no bullets left in the gun. He has a gun in his mouth, and he's like crying. His son's there dead next to him. He goes out of the truck, waiting for something to take him, be it a giant creature or a spider, just to end his life and suffering. And then what rolls through the mist? The military, burning up all the monsters. It's so tragic because he didn't have to kill his son, but he did. And it's going to end there.
Do you think that is an analogy for Stephen King going to rehab? Like he ruined all his relationships with everybody. He's there alone.
Literally
and
burned
then
them to the ground.
he goes to rehab.
So
Like,
that film, there's a lot of cheesy acting and bad CG in it, but that ending kind of makes it for me. Because it did it better than Stephen King did. And even he admits that. So there's our top 5 plus 1 with The Shining. So the worst films, we have Tommyknockers, The Langoliers. I don't want to say it, but I want to say it. Secret Garden, Secret Window, because Johnny Depp is so hammy in it. It's some of his worst acting ever in a movie.
I remember watching that movie and being like, this movie's kind of shitty. I do remember that.
Needful Things,
Ah.
which is about a shopkeep that gives you all of your heart's desires at a price.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like semi-anthology like. It's a little short stories all kind of sewn together. Again, bad acting. And I want to say one of the worst and most laughable King adaptations is Thinner. Have you seen Thinner? You know what Thinner
I
is?
don't think so, no.
Thinner is a story that they couldn't make today because it'd be like, you're fat shaming. It's a story about a guy, a fat guy.
In a little coat?
In a little coat. Fat guy in a little coat. But a fat guy who kills the daughter of some shaman by accident. And he puts a curse on the fat man, the shaman. He gives him the Thinner curse. Now, fat guy was trying to lose weight to no avail for a long time. So he got the curse and he ate like a fat pig and he started to lose weight. He's like, shit, look, I'm getting all thin. I look like a human being again. I'm not like a blob. But then he goes from this obese cow to sort of like an average sized human being. And then he looks emaciated by the time the movie's about to end. So he wants to stop the curse at all costs. He's like, please, I gotta stop this goddamn curse. So he goes to the shaman, and the shaman puts the curse into a pie. And he's like, all right, the curse is in the pie now. So give the pie to your enemies, and then they'll get the curse. You'll be free of the curse. He's like, great, awesome, thanks for the pie, brah. Puts the pie in the fridge in his own home, goes to bed, all is good. The next morning he wakes up and he sees his wife and daughter eating from the pie. So he's like, fuck. All right. Sits down.
I gotta be honest,
And
this sounds like an Always Sunny in Philadelphia
He
episode.
sits down and eats a piece of pie, and that's how it ends.
This sounds like D and Charlie and all them
Yeah.
fucking sitting around.
Well, it would be Frank who would pass on the pie curse to, to all of
The
them.
pie is cursed. What are you doing? And then they just sit down and eat it together anyway.
Now, I should also mention there's a number of weird Stephen King unofficial sequel movies that came out.
Oh no.
Like there was Pet Sematary 2,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was horrible. There was a Carrie 2, which was also shit. So Stephen King had a lot of shit movies, and he also made some shit from his shit. A lot of shit. That's, I would say, we got Tommyknockers, we got Langoliers, we got Needful Things, Thinner, and Secret Garden, Secret Window. But there's so many other ones. So many more. Dreamcatcher comes to mind. Another alien movie that was a horrible adaptation. I enjoyed Under the Dome. That was a TV series that they did. That was like this weird dome came over a town one day, and they couldn't get out of it. But then the TV show went kind of weird because you got to stretch it out for like more than one season.
That sounds like what the hell was that show? Not Extinction. What the hell was the name of it? The one with the doctor from ER. That it was on like TBS or something, or TNT or whatever. I don't know, one of those.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting towards the end of the show.
Yes.
So there is something you didn't touch on that you only mentioned it that I would like for you to spend just like 2 minutes on.
Sure.
What is the big deal about the Dark Tower? Like my brother loves it.
Oh God! So you know
like
what?
Time travel. He meets himself in it, or like the character meets Stephen King in it. He knows that he's writing about him. It's like, what the hell is that all about?
I'm not a fan of Dark Tower series.
Okay.
I'm not into it. The Gunslinger is sort of like this iconic character in this franchise. But I wasn't one for his like miniseries books, like with multiple parts. Like they weren't for me, and it was too fantasy for my liking. I was like, I tried, I just couldn't get into it. There's like, I think 6 or 7 books in the whole Dark Tower series. And I'm
they're
like,
graphic novels, right?
Yeah, and I was like, eh.
Oh no,
they're books. They're
books, and then they were graphic novels.
Yeah, I was like, okay, fucking Harry Potter. I don't care for this. Never liked them.
Yeah, my brother really liked them, and the movie was awful.
Oh, that was a bad. See, now that if I had watched that one, I just heard it was bad. I never really watched it. I heard it was trash though. Poor Idris Elba couldn't see that film for nothing. Oh, Christine, another that's a
that's so bad it's good.
Yes, that's its own category. It's so bad it's good.
Absolutely,
fucking movie. So good though. Fucking killer cars. Is it drugs, man? The drugs.
Yeah,
the drugs and the
drugs
booze.
were big in the 80s.
The drugs and the booze.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug. Folks,
really
that's going to bring us to the end of Andy Explains It All. This has been all about Stephen King. Remember.
What did you learn?
So, what did I learn? I learned that Stephen King... I've learned that Stephen King is prolific, and that's not always a good thing. I've learned that his name carries more weight than it probably should at this point. But I also know that he, especially early in his career, was very influential on many different...
He was very under the influence.
Parts. Oh, yeah. Many different parts of entertainment. He was a part of many different things. I think now he's probably...
He's scaled it back a bit.
He scaled it back, but I think what he's done now is more more focused and I guess more digestible by more people. He's like more mainstream, I guess, kind of. He's less weird.
Right.
But whatever. I think
there's no kid orgies. That's what you're asking.
If there are, before we end the show, if there was only one book, one movie that is by Stephen King or a Stephen King property that I should consume, what should it be?
Holy shit. Only one book and only one movie. I would say you should read Pet Cemetery
Mm.
because that is Stephen King's own self-professed. It scared him the most. That was the book that I think he wrote fairly early in his career, but his wife said, "Do not publish this. It's way too dark. Like, put it in a drawer, lock it up, and throw away the key. Like, you can't put this out there for the world to see." But
Mm.
he was under contract, he had book deals, and he had to hand in a book at some point. So he said, "Here, take this book. Take this cursed item out of my life and give it to the world." So that, I would say, the Pet Cemetery novel. And in terms of which of his films adaptations you should watch, I would say Carrie. Carrie is just a classic horror.
And that's the OG.
Yep, it's De Palma, it's Sissy Spacek, it's John Travolta. It's an
Hey,
amazing
it's
movie.
Carrie.
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Carter.
great.
Carrie.
It's great. It's a great movie.
Now, twist on that challenge. What is the one book and movie I should consume? What is the book and movie of that are the same property, the same story?
Oh, that's The Shining.
Okay.
Just you can see how different they are in
Mm.
tone,
Mm.
in elements, in all of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And that is Andy Explains It All. Topic, Stephen King. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that.
These.
That was a lot of fun.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna tease the next one, or I'm gonna just give the topic of the next one. But I have to find
the doc.
I have to find the doc because they're all listed there. So
I
just
think
give
it
me
was
a
all
moment.
in GChat. You kind of like, here's
No,
the next 8 of these.
No, I put them in a doc. So okay. The next episode, which is going to be on January 24th, so 2 weeks from now, is going to be all about the Metal Gear series.
Ooh, and I'm playing them again too.
All about the Metal Gear series,
We've
ladies and
gone from
gentlemen.
one drunkard to another drunkard. It's like it can't get, or it can get weirder.
One egomaniac to another.
How's that Death Stranding treating you, by the way?
No comment. Folks, if you want to follow the show on social media, you could do so. We are at NDS Podcast. I am at Batchild27. Andy is at Pants Guy. And you can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/dual-screens-podcasts. If you want to watch our shows, which we are doing this one, and we're doing Gamescast live on twitch.tv/dual-screen-streams, just go right there. Hit the follow button. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, great. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when a new episode goes up.
Ding, ding, hit the bells.
Ding, ding. We want to thank Andrew Douglas, Angimoto for our art. And our theme song is by Bradley Parsons at Train Sound Studio.
That is a hot-ass theme song.
Hot-ass beats, which are going to play us out, so don't worry. Thank you so much to our Patreon producer, Colton Nestler. And again, if you want to support us on Patreon, which is how this show is possible, please go to patreon.com/NDS podcast. And you can support us for as little as $1. Andy, take us out.
Oh, do I have words for the outro?
Say what you want. Say what you want.
This has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to more of these. This should be a full-blown show that happens more than once in the season. It should be like an every week thing because there's so many things that I pretend to know a lot about.
Wikipedia is your friend.
It really is. Looking forward to next week with Metal Gear and all that fun stuff. That's going to be a shit show. I can't wait.
All right, you need a sign off. You know how mine is be excellent to each other. You need something.
Okay. And as always, go ass to mouth.
Cue theme song.